Hello, I'm Sally Baudet. Welcome to Global Business Europe. Our top stories. No driver, no problem. More robo-taxis are coming to Europe under an expanded partnership between China's Pony AI and Uber. The White House says it's losing up to $26 billion a year by countries dodging tariffs. A new era for global trade. China's about to launch the first regular Arctic shipping route, halving transit times. And a modern twist on one of China's best-known ancient legends. The animation All Wishes Come True hits London cinemas. Thousands more robo-taxis could soon be hitting Europe's streets under an expanded partnership between China's Pony AI and Uber. Here's our correspondent Siobhan McCall with all the details.
Thanks, Sally. Hi. Pony AI and Uber are planning to deploy more than 2,000 robo-taxis across Europe. This will see them expand to 4 more as yet unnamed cities. Well, the two companies launched Europe's first commercial robo-taxi service earlier this year. That's in Croatia's capital, Zagreb, and customers can book through local mobility firm Verne, with Uber integration set to follow. The expanded partnership between Pony AI and Uber also includes plans to explore opportunities in the Middle East, a market that is growing rapidly. Pony AI will provide its so-called Level 4 autonomous driving technology. This means no human driver is required, but the car can only drive itself in defined areas and under specific conditions. Uber, meanwhile, has around 200 million monthly consumers globally, so a ready-made customer base for autonomous vehicles. Alphabet-backed Waymo is currently the global leader in terms of robo-taxi operations. It has a fleet of 5,000 cars and completes 500,000 paid rides per week, primarily in the United States. It's set to expand to London later this year. Another Chinese company, WeRide, operates or tests in 60 cities across 13 countries, including several in Europe. It has partnerships with Uber in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, and it's piloting in Spain later this year. And the global robo-taxi market is poised for extraordinary growth. Some analysts predict it will be worth close to $150 billion by 2033. Well, let's get more on this. Peter Wells is Director for the Centre of Automotive Industry Research at Cardiff University in the UK. Peter, thanks for joining me. How significant is this extended partnership between Pony AI and Uber?
Well, it's certainly a big one. I think the whole world of autonomous vehicles and ride-hailing have long been thrown together as being natural partners in a sense, but it's taken a long time to go through the whole development process and really make these things happen on the ground. For me, the defining difference now is artificial intelligence.
What is it about artificial intelligence and these robo-taxis that you find so interesting?
Well, the autonomous vehicles do away with the driver, the need for the driver. That saves a lot of money, and that's obviously a benefit for the ride-hailing businesses. But to get the most optimized system, to have the whole system working in an integrated, cohesive, optimized fashion, you need it to be managed by AI. And I think now we can see the real benefits are beginning to come through. That's why the rate of testing, the rate of deployment of these concepts has really accelerated in the last couple of years.
Pony AI has been very successful in China's Tier 1 cities, but what sort of challenge does operating in Europe bring?
Well, I think there's a whole bunch of challenges. As you get away from more controlled environments to more diverse and complex environments, so those challenges get greater. And I think they have to be quite careful about choosing where they're going to deploy, how far they're going to deploy. And of course, the regulatory constraints are often stronger in Europe. That it's a more cautious market, and consumers are more cautious. So I think there's a lot to be learned from both sides, both from the deployment side and from the customer side.
A lot of people are somewhat distrustful of driverless cars. What has to change to get more people on board?
It's a difficult one because the expectations, the way in which consumers think about this isn't really particularly rational. It's probably the case that even now autonomous vehicles are safer in most situations, most of the time, compared to having a human driver. But to be able to internalize that and accept that, that's much more difficult. It's a bit like the fear of flying. Flying's actually the safest way of flying anywhere around the world. But people still have that fear of flying. So I think it's something which more usage, more being accustomed to seeing these vehicles, participating in rides with them, the more we get used to it, the more people will take it up. And I think there's a massive opportunity here. A lot of people are holding and using cars in these densely packed urban areas that don't really want to. They'd much rather have the freedom and the mobility of ride-hailing. If that's autonomous, then that will be fine.
Peter, thank you very much for those insights. Peter Wells, Director of the Centre for Automotive Industry Research at Cardiff University. And back to you, Sally.
Fascinating. Thank you so much, Siobhan. Well, from taxis to tariffs, the White House says the United States is losing up to $26 billion a year from goods that are shipped from the country of origin via a separate country to avoid import duties. Our correspondent Mitch McCann is in New York. Hello, Mitch. So the White House is saying countries that do this are going to be penalised. What's the plan to actually stop it?
Yes, hi Sally, good afternoon from New York on this Friday. Look, the Americans' plan here, or their main plan, is to create what it calls an AI-enabled detective border, which would be this mechanism that supports US customs and border control. Now, it says this AI system is going to work by integrating shipment data and routing histories, among other analytical tools, to identify products that have been transshipped to America. They are calling for Congress to strengthen the laws to target countries that do this, and they also plan to use existing laws where the White House says that if a country is caught doing this, they can retrospectively impose a tariff dating back a year. Now, according to the White House, countries facing high tariffs from the US are sending their products to another country, a third country, with a lower tariff figure, and then slightly reworking or repackaging the product only to send it on to the US, where the importing company is going to pay less than they would have from that original country. Now, Peter Navarro, he is the White House trade advisor. He told reporters that China's been doing this by shipping goods to around 40 countries, and that the US is losing up to $26 billion in revenue each year because of it. It's reported that previously China has reacted to Mr. Trump's focus on transshipping by saying China will not accept it and will take resolute countermeasures if it feels it's being cut out of the supply chain. But Peter Navarro also said, hey, we're not targeting China here, we're targeting the other countries that are now involved in this practice, of which there's around 40 countries. So it's going to be interesting to see how this new AI plan at the border works for the US government moving forward.
Indeed, it will be. Mitch, as the stalemate over the Strait of Hormuz continues, the US is now looking at ways to further isolate Iran economically. Tell us more.
Yeah, Sally, I think this really suggests that any agreement as it relates to the war in Iran between the US and Iran is slipping further away, because Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has done an interview earlier today where he said Americans should be watching this space for announcements next week, because the US is going to apply measures that have never been seen in the economic isolation on a country. He says it's going to be part of what he called a 1-2 punch, and that the blockade of the ports in the Strait of Hormuz, or Iranian ports, is going to continue as well. As well as this, at a time when Iran may be looking to secure its economy, it has announced that it's set to join the BRICS New Development Bank, the NDB, which was set up by BRICS countries Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, which is aimed at supporting infrastructure and sustainable development projects in global South countries. Now, it may offer Iran an alternative source of development financing away from Western and American sanctions and their financial system. So a new announcement from Iran around that, as the US announces it's going to unleash possibly economic chaos on Iran in the coming weeks.
Thank you so much for that update. That's our correspondent, Mitch McCann in New York. A new route between China and Europe is opening up. From Saturday, a weekly container service through the Arctic will begin, made possible by melting sea ice. Sea Legend tested the journey last year. Now it's ready for these regular trips, which offer a faster way to move goods from China to the West. It will also cut costs and reduce emissions. The Ice Silk Road will run along Russia's northern coast, linking Ningbo on China's east coast with Felixstowe on the east coast of the United Kingdom. The test journey took just 20 days. That is around half the time it takes to ship goods between China and Europe via the Suez Canal. This route avoids the Suez Canal, the Red Sea, the Bab el-Mandab Strait, all key shipping choke points affected by the war in Iran. For now, the service will run once a week for 7 weeks until October the 3rd. Marco Forgioni is the Director General of the Chartered Institute of Export and International Trade. I asked him about the route's potential.
In coming years, this could be a really important sea route, not just for China, but actually for access between Europe and the East. So I think that as we're seeing climate change affecting the extent of sea ice through the route and investment in specialist shipping, actually this could become a major factor.
Given the geopolitical uncertainty around certain waterways at the moment, how significant is the timing of this opening up?
Well, it's part of a broader strategy of China particularly looking at diversification of its supply networks and supply chains. In addition to the work that's going into the opening up the Arctic, the Northern Sea route, the polar Silk Road, as China is calling it, there's also huge investment in what's known as the Middle Corridor, which is the multimodal route through the Caspian Sea. So it's clear that China sees access to its markets as being constrained currently by geopolitics and is investing heavily to open up alternative routes, avoiding those choke points in geopolitically sensitive areas.
What is required in order to make sure that what is up to now being quite a dangerous icy route stays safe?
So there are a number of areas. First is the investment in the ice-breaking ships and specialist container ships that can handle sea ice. Then there also needs to be investment in search, rescue and additional support. There aren't very many ports at all available along that Arctic route. But certainly as we see demand improving, as we see the period of time that the Arctic route remains seriously ice-free expanding. We're now looking at nearly 5 months of ice-free access. The route will be used more regularly, and we will start to see those investments paying off. But indeed, not just China and Russia are investing in their ice-breaking shipping capabilities, but Finland is investing dramatically in its ice-breaking capabilities.
Of course, it's an environmentally sensitive area as well. What controls are in place to make sure that it stays protected?
Well, the International Maritime Organization has set rules, particularly for transiting around through vulnerable areas, particularly through the Arctic. So it will be a case of what mitigations can be put in place, and then should the worst happen, that there are spillages or issues of contamination, that those can be dealt with effectively, which means investment in the infrastructure around the route. And that's something that Russia is already looking at, not just to open up the Arctic Sea route for container shipping and for global supply networks, but also because of its military access, particularly into the North Atlantic.
Yeah, that's Marco Forgioni, Director General of the Chartered Institute of Export and International Trade. Now, in other news, France's top court has blocked a social media ban for children under 15. Lawmakers approved the measure last month, but the Constitutional Council has overruled it, saying the ban undermines freedom of expression. If the restrictions had been introduced, France would have become the second country to implement a teenage social media ban after Australia. A consortium, including Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, has bought a 1/3 stake in Liverpool Football Club. Bezos will reportedly not have a seat on the board. The Premier League club is worth around $7 billion. US retail sales have fallen for the first time in 9 months. July figures show a drop of 0.6%. Now, economists put this down to consumers having depleted generous tax refunds, which had been helping them with the rising cost of household goods. The results follow sluggish jobs data released last week. This is Global Business Europe. Still ahead, Spain is the olive oil capital of the world, but could brutal summer heat put that status at risk?
Everything is a business story.
Welcome back to Global Business Europe with me, Sally Baudet. Your headlines. No driver, no problem. More robo-taxis coming to Europe under an expanded partnership between China's Pony AI and Uber. The White House says it's losing up to $26 billion a year by countries dodging tariffs. And a new era for global trade. China is about to launch the first regular Arctic shipping route, halving transit times. Extreme heat and drought are threatening Spain's olive oil industry. As harvests shrink and costs rise, the impact is being felt from olive groves to supermarket shelves. Ken Brown reports.
Olive oil, this liquid gold. It's the lifeblood of communities here in Spain and the inspiration behind this Fiesta del Olivo en Mora, the region of Castilla y La Mancha. It celebrates a 3,000-year-old history, and here in the Toledo province they produced 35,000 tons of olive oil last year, while nationally Spain accounts for over half the world's production. Culturally, olives are a way of life here in Spain. Geographically, they're everywhere. Hundreds of millions of productive trees in olive groves like this one cover almost 3 million hectares. That's nearly the size of Belgium. But a perfect storm is gathering. Climate change, freak weather events, wildfires, the rise in the cost of fertilizer, US tariffs, wars, and now the El Niño weather phenomenon. This year's 35,000 tons of olive oil produced in Toledo is a big drop from the 54,000 tons the previous year, and it's a similar story being told across the country.
Between
the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, the war in Iran, our last study shows that our costs have risen by 57%. That means that up to 3/4 of Spanish olive plantations are now operating at a loss.
And the problem isn't just confined to Spain either. Europe's climate is heating at twice the rate of the rest of the world, and food production numbers are plummeting.
Just this year in Europe, there's an estimate that the June heat wave alone caused losses of $2 billion to farmers. That's 9 million tons of grain. I reported on a study recently that estimated that climate change alone was already sort of causing $20 billion of losses a year to farmers worldwide. And the thing is, that was looking at just 3 crops. That was just wheat, soybeans, and maize.
The problem will be exacerbated by El Niño, he says.
It's by far the strongest El Niño we've ever had. So, I mean, the numbers are staggering. And there's a forecast already from Goldman Sachs that this could lead to food prices going up 16% just from this El Niño. So that's a huge food shock.
In Spain, they call it El Super Niño. But despite the record temperatures and wildfires, there often seems to be a dissonance between scientists looking at macro data and farmers and industry leaders on the ground. Jose Maria points to prices of petrol or gas, labour and fertiliser going up because of wars in Ukraine and Iran. Eusebio García de la Cruz, CEO of the family olive business, points to poor water management as the problem.
Water is the oil of the future, and especially in an area like ours. The Spanish economy would be much better off with correct and more efficient management of its water.
He insists that higher prices for olive oil are justified.
If 1 litre of olive oil costs €4 more, is that a big deal? That's the price of 2 or 3 coffees.
The one thing they do agree on, however, is that the price of food is set to skyrocket again. Ken Brown, CGTN in Toledo, Spain.
The film All Wishes Come True has opened at cinemas around the world. The much-loved Chinese legend has already been a box office hit at home, and now the filmmakers hope to recreate its magic by striking a chord with audiences everywhere. Our correspondent Li Jianhua reports.
A story of a daring heist, friendship, redemption, justice, and plenty of laughter. This animation, inspired by the ancient Chinese legend of the 8 immortals, is now landing in British cinemas. When a magical lantern protecting humanity disappears, 8 unlikely mortals come together to find it. What begins as a treasure hunt becomes a fight to save humanity, and the story of ordinary people finding the courage to do the right thing.
One thing we want to showcase is the strength of Chinese animation. We now have the technology to bring the imagination of ancient China and these distinctly Eastern mythical worlds vividly to life, allowing audiences to experience the appeal of Chinese culture. At its heart, the film is about doing what is right and being a good person. I think that is something people from any culture can relate to.
The legend has evolved through Chinese folklore for centuries. Now, filmmakers have given it another makeover with modern humor, sarcasm and struggles familiar to audiences today.
We enjoyed the movie a lot. It's got a lot of culture in it, a lot of information. You learn a lot about the history.
I learned a lot about this movie, like how to stick together, how to be with the group, and you believe what you want, and you need to do it, you need to follow your dream.
The film has already raked in around $210 million in China. Now, its overseas release is testing if that success can travel further.
We hope these films can succeed commercially. More importantly, we hope they can open up a dialogue between cultures. Different stories connect with different audiences in different ways. If overseas viewers can find something in a Chinese film that truly resonates with them, while also discovering how Chinese cinema is evolving, I think that's incredibly meaningful.
For years, China's film industry has been asking how Chinese stories can travel internationally. And now some filmmakers are looking for the answer, not by making their films less Chinese, but by finding that universal link within them. And in this film, which has a lot of cultural references, that universal link is simple, which is how ordinary people can become extraordinary. Li Jianhua, CGTN, London.
We're joined now by Human Chan, founder and executive director of the UK-China film Collab. Human, thanks so much for joining us. That looks like a fantastic movie. And we have seen some wonderful releases from China, a lot of really fantastic animation. But how close are movies from China to achieving the success that we've seen with Chinese gaming internationally?
I think it depends on how companies and studios can combine film as an IP or game as an IP and transfer them to film. So sometimes when you look at the success of gaming internationally, of course Chinese games have really taken off in the past few years. But then the next question is that whether they can then convert the IP into a film or potentially a TV series that can reach a wider audience as well, so that they can keep the fans and the players and the young audience for a longer journey of engagement.
What genres of Chinese films work best outside China, do you think? Is it animation?
At the moment, it seems that animation is the genre that is getting a lot of international attention. I think largely because of the home box office record that it has reached. The previous one before the current one is Naja. I think everyone is looking at Naja, why was it successful in China, and so on and so forth. But I want to pause at that because I don't want to limit it just to one genre. If you look at films, how can they be successful internationally? I don't think we need to limit into genre. Any good story, whether they're in an animation form or any other genre, as long as they tell a good story, I think it has the potential to reach a wider audience, especially the young audience around the world.
Jinhua spoke so very well about those universal stories that touch all of us. But there are differences, whether it's what makes us laugh or the stories that define our particular culture. Do you think that we're ever going to truly have an international hit that works on every continent?
At the moment, I think it's looking likely, especially with several successes already up until this point. But I think instead of telling the mythical Chinese story or the folklore story, perhaps the filmmakers and producers can try something more futuristic, looking into the future, rather than telling a historical story or folklore or heritage that sometimes might be a little bit difficult for young audience to understand the depth of the history and the philosophy and culture. But leaving that alone, I think young people nowadays, I think we have possibly the most imaginative young audience around the world than ever. They have received lots of information than the previous generations. So I do think their minds are open and they have lots of options to watch online and also on different streaming platforms. So if anytime, this is the time for filmmakers from around the world, for Chinese filmmakers to try to tap into the global young audience. The young audience of the future. I think the more imaginative they are, the more kind of different cultural perspective that they are being showcased, then the better hope that we have.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for chatting to us. That's Human Chan, founder and executive director of the UK-China Film Collab. All right, let's look at your headlines once more. More robo-taxis coming to Europe under an expanded partnership between China's Pony AI and Uber. The White House says it's losing up to $26 billion a year by countries dodging tariffs. And a new era for global trade. China is about to launch the first regular Arctic shipping route, halving transit times. That's it for Global Business Europe. Thanks so much for watching. More on all our stories at europe.cgtn.com. Do follow CGTN Europe on Facebook, Instagram and TikTok. And you can go to CGTN Europe's channel on the Telegram app or scan the QR code on the screen to get stories and updates sent direct to your phone. Coming up next on CGTN Africa Live. We'll see you again next week, same time, same place, from all of us here in London.